It's that time of the year again. A month long of ashes flying all over the place. A month long of obnoxiously loud Jedi singers, bawling whistle register notes at the top of their lungs till 10 p.m. every night. A month long of the odor of burning hell money, and jasmine-scented jaw sticks infusing the country. Yep. Those who observe the Hungry Ghost Festival will know what I mean. Personally, I don't observe the festival, because I don't believe in ghosts and such. A short introduction of the Hungry Ghost Festival to those who don't know it. It takes place during the entire Chinese 7th month. People believe that the gates of hell will open, and then the spirits are released to wander around for a month. Normally, people will leave food offerings out for the ghosts to appease them, usually on the side of the pavements or roads, so that they don't drag the live people down into hell with them when they return. People will also burn hell money, which is basically just paper that will turn into currency for the ghosts to use in the underworld. How much hell money you burn for your ancestors is sort of a measure of how filial you are. Another version I heard from my friend is that these ghosts are people who had been uncared and unprovided for when they were alive, and so the food offerings are to provide for them and to appease them, so that they won't continue to disturb the living. It's considered taboo to step on any of the offerings or hell money ashes left on the roadside. People say that if you do accidentally step on any of those, just apologize and move on, or you will fall sick or get possessed or something. Even though I don't believe I will get harmed, I still tend to avoid stepping on anything in order to not seem disrespectful. To date, I do not remember ever having stepped on any offerings, jaw sticks or ashes. Anyway, story time. This just happened last week. I was walking with my sister to a nearby shopping mall. There were 2 ways to get there. One way was through the Hawker Center. Look it up. It's a must to visit one of these and try the food if you ever come to Singapore. The other way was through an open parking area. Normally we walk through the Hawker Center because it's nearer, but during the Hungry Ghost Festival, most of the hawkers would set up little shrines in their stalls, plus one big collective one just outside. As a result, the collective fumes of the jaw sticks are almost unbearable for both my sister and I, who have sensitive respiratory tracts. And so, to avoid lung destruction or death by suffocation, we took the other path through the open parking area. Nice, clean air. Since there were cars driving around looking for parking spots, we stuck to the pavement. It was an uneven one, with plenty of loose bricks and cracked tiles which the government somehow never replaced. But years of living here had taught us to never lose our footing. We could easily navigate the pavement with our eyes closed. Then my sister suggested an idea. "Let's see who manages to walk the longest distance on the pavement edge without falling off," she had said. It was one of our favorite childhood games. I had always done this just for fun as a child, way before we were taught how to use balancing beams in gym. My mom wasn't thrilled at an unstable 4-year-old being allowed to wobble on the rough cement edge of a pavement, but my grandfather encouraged it. He said it helped to hone my balance skills. Anyway, I digress. I quickly agreed and we started. I went slow at first, putting one foot in front of the other cautiously. I certainly didn't want to trip and fall on any of those loose bricks. But then I turned around and I saw my sister behind me, quickly catching up. "You suck," she taunted. "Why are you going so slow?" "Hey, I didn't know this was a race," I argued. "It's a matter of..." She didn't let me finish. "You suck, you suck," she chanted in a sing-song voice, and started moving faster and faster towards me. Not wanting to lose out and not wanting her to crash into me on the narrow edge, I picked up my pace. Laughing and teasing each other, we half ran about 3/4 of the length of the pavement. And then it happened, as I knew it would. In an effort to not bump into me, she had tried to hold her footsteps, but somehow failed. And then she had tried to widen her stance, but her ankle hit a loose brick that was sticking up from the ground. Arms flailing wildly, she descended not so gracefully upon the rough, merciless cement waiting for her. My first response was to gloat and tease. "Who's the sucker now?" I yelled in my excitement, doubling over with laughter. "Get up and stop being so stupid. I have a plaster in my bag, I think." She stood up slowly, and the first thing I noticed wasn't her skin knee, nor was it the slight graze upon her elbow, but a huge patch of mashed up haute croix, a sort of steamed Chinese cupcake, on her butt, which she immediately started brushing off. My eyes went wide. "You fell on an offering," I gasped, slightly horrified. Broken jaw sticks lay strewn all over, crushed by her weight. The cake lay smashed into the ground, mingled with the molten wax from the candles that are so hard to remove when the offerings are over. A dismal-looking chow tao, a kind of peach-shaped bun usually eaten during birthdays, to represent long life for the birthday person, lay hunched up in the corner, where the pavement and the road met, entirely squashed up with a feeling more outside than inside. Luckily, the candles had already been snuffed out by the wind, so my sister did not sustain any burn injuries. We were at a loss for what to do. On one hand, we didn't believe in ghosts, and so we weren't frightened by the prospect of possession or whatever. On the other hand, a few passers-by had already seen her fall, and we didn't want to seem disrespectful. Should we clean up the mess? Should we apologize? And if so, to whom? The people? Or the spirits? To the devotee who put these things out? If so, who and where was he? These questions flashed through my mind in a split second, and then, not knowing what else to do, I grabbed my sister and ran like my life depended on it. The next day was a beautiful Saturday morning. Not your typical storybook sunny morning with azure blue skies and all of that, but a comforting one, with rain beating against the windows and mild thunder every now and then. It had a comforting beauty of its own. I laid cozily in bed for a few minutes, listening to the soothing sounds of nature, and then I looked over at my sister in her own bed. I could already tell that she wasn't feeling so well. Her face was extremely pale, and she was sweating despite the cooling weather we get so rarely in this hot devil's armpit of a country. She could barely sit up without the whole room spinning, and her temperature was sky high, she had said. I got worried. She had the strongest immune system in this whole family, and yet... I hopped out of bed to rummage for some Panadol and water, and I told her to pop a couple of pills and rest. The pills would do their job. Something didn't feel right though. As much as I tried to convince myself that it was just an ordinary fever, that she would be well again in a couple of days at most, something deep down inside of me knew that it wasn't. That something knew it had to do with the previous day's accident. But that's all rubbish, I argued with myself. It was just some food left on the pavement, by some superstitious people for the crows and ants to ravage eventually. It can't be for actual spirits. They don't exist. But how do you know that they don't exist? The small voice shot back. Just because you haven't seen them doesn't mean that they're not real. I had had enough, and I spent the next few hours alternating between checking on my sister and drowning out the small voice at the back of my head with a full volume music through my earbuds. Sunday came and went, and still the fever showed no signs of letting up. If anything, it had only gotten worse. Getting worried, I asked if she was well enough to at least walk down to a nearby clinic. I don't remember how, but somehow, she managed to drag herself out of bed and go down to the clinic with me. Even the doctor looked worried. He said that she had looked extremely dehydrated and asked if she was drinking enough water. She's been drinking plenty, I said. It goes through a 1.5 liter bottle within 2 hours. If that's not enough, I don't know what is. The doctor looked skeptical. Alright, continue to stay hydrated then. Here's your prescription. We went to bed after the visit to the clinic. I desperately hoped that she would recover soon, and most of all, I hoped it was just an ordinary fever. I wouldn't want it to be anything else. I was awoken up out of my sleep by a hand shaking me. Squinting up through my heavy eyelids, I saw the silhouette of my sister. "What do you want?" I grunted, a little annoyed. It's like 3 a.m. If you want water, I left a bottle on your bedside table. It's not that, she whispered, even though there was nobody else in the house to wake up. I had a bad dream. At first, my annoyance grew upon hearing the statement. So I suppose you want to come and cuddle in bed with me and hope that I can protect you, like the grown-ass woman you are, I retorted. No, it's not that. I'm sorry for waking you up, I just... She broke down sobbing. Slightly alarmed now, I felt a twinge of regret. Hey, what's going on? What happened? What did you dream? For a while, she sat on the edge of my bed, her body racked with terrified sobs, unable to explain what had happened. I waited patiently while rubbing her back soothingly, waiting for it to come around. Finally, the sobs had quieted. She shifted her position to make herself more comfortable, and started to recount the entire ordeal. I was in a cave, she began. I was with an exploring team, checking out the caves in a mountain. We had just stumbled upon a huge one with many bats hanging from the ceiling. We were discussing the possibility of setting up camp inside there. All of a sudden, a couple appears at the mouth of the cave. They seem to be shouting at us, trying to tell us something and that we shouldn't go in there, and we should probably come out as quickly as possible. They were only a few meters away from us, and yet we couldn't hear what they were trying to say. She paused for a while, and then continued. Just as suddenly as they had appeared, they disappeared. We shrugged it off and started to set up our stuff inside. I was helping a teammate pitch a tent. The teammate told me to go grab a tent pole, so I went over to the bag where they kept the equipment. I reached in, I felt around and I took hold of what I thought was a tent pole. But when I had pulled it out, to my horror, it had turned from a tent pole into a woman. The same woman from the couple just now. Instead of looking like a normal person as she just did now, she'd become this. Here she broke down again, struggling to put into words the horror of what she had seen. She was a demon woman, my sister said eventually. I didn't want to probe any further. How she could have known that the woman was a demon instead of just plain ugly, I didn't know, but I didn't want to upset her by asking. It was obviously too terrifying to recount, so I just waited for her to continue. She stared at me, looking right into my soul. At that moment, I could feel her reading all my innermost thoughts. All that have ever happened to me since the day I was born. All the memories I had repressed into the recesses of my heart. She knew all of them. Just in that split second. And then what? I questioned, after half a minute of silence. I don't believe in ghosts, but I must admit that night her recounting of her dream sent chills down my spine. And then I heard a voice. She didn't open her mouth to talk or anything, but I just knew it was her voice. I heard her telling me, a warning. I didn't know if it was a warning or a threat or... I couldn't contain my curiosity. What did she say? She said, first, you show the utmost disrespect to my husband and I. You trample and mess up our sacred offerings, and then you come into my cave, my home, without my permission. Let this be the last time that you do so. It's a pity for me and a good thing for you that my husband is so merciful, or I would have had you the first time. Of course I pleaded with her, trying to convince her that I had no control over what I was doing in my dream, and... Here she started screaming and sobbing for all she was worth. For a moment I feared she would succumb to the hyperventilating. I ran for a plastic bag, but when I dashed back into the room holding it, she was strangely calm again. A sort of weird aura surrounded her, and she was sitting up with the kind of strength she hadn't had since the fever. Her eyes looked glazed over, as if she had seen some sort of vision. So what happened next? I asked, dropping the plastic bag and tensing every muscle in my body, ready for whatever unpredictable action my sister would do next. She opened her mouth wide, wider than any snake you've ever seen, and I caught a glimpse inside her gargantuan mouth, which seemed to swallow up all of my surroundings, including myself. I saw the underworld. I saw the millions and millions of souls being tortured, and I heard their screams. Their screams I will never forget. Unlike any other sound you would expect to come from a human. Guttural, echoing, mingling with the screams of millions of other sinners being punished for their crimes. The last thing that I heard before I woke up was her voice saying the next time, "If it happens again, I will join them. Tell me," she added, gripping my shoulders with sudden fierce intensity and staring right into my eyes. "Tell me that I will be able to erase the memories. Tell me I can forget. Tell me how, their screams, their pain." She trailed off here, her fingernails still digging into my shoulders, creating little crescent-shaped marks. Her eyes, plain and gazed over, stared right into the depths of my soul. And then without another word, she marched right back to her own bed, fell down in it, and was instantly sound asleep. I suddenly realized that my own legs were shaking so badly I could barely walk back to mine. She hasn't been awake since. She's not dead, but I can't get her to wake up. No amount of shaking, calling, blasting music or moves at full volume, or anything, can get her to wake up. She's now in the hospital under examination, but the doctor says that there's absolutely nothing wrong with her. Even her temperature is normal now. The fever is gone, but she just won't wake up, and I don't know what to do. I can't decide if this is a case for the doctor or an exorcist. Whatever it is, I really hope that she wakes up soon. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have grabbed her and run off. I should have just apologized like the people had said. It's too late for that now, though. I can only watch and wait. I never believed in spirits, but just because you don't believe in them does not mean that they're not there. Be very careful.